Welcome back, everyone. It is Aric from Rare Candy. Today we are back checking out Japan's new Dark Phantasma set. This thing is set to drop next week over there, but we have the full set list. Every card is going to be revealed here today. We have seen, I think, a good chunk of cards that are coming out in the set, but I'm pretty sure we have a few new ones that were previously unrevealed that we're going to be checking out as well today. So very excited to see how those are going to stack up. But largely, these are going to be my first impressions, my knee-jerk reactions to these cards. Once we get a little bit closer to the Lost Origins set release in the summer, I'll do a more comprehensive set review, going more in-depth on some of these cards. But nevertheless, still want to give you some of my early opinions on what we have coming out here. But with that being said, remember to smack that like button to feed the YouTube algorithm, and let's jump in and check out what we have in Dark Phantasma. Alrighty, so up first we have Parasect here, and this is going to pair nicely with this Hisuian Electrode. We could probably just talk about both these together. But the Parasect says whenever you play this card from hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, you may use this ability, and both active Pokemon are now asleep and poisoned. So normally this would be really annoying. You don't want to put yourself to sleep. But luckily, the Hisuian Electrode actually can kind of get around this thanks to a new Pokemon tool card. Outside of Electrode, the only other thing I could think of that really would like something like this is it's a Galarian Slowbro. I think it's in Chilling Rain or Battle Styles. I think it's one of those sets, but it does more damage if it's affected by a special condition. So there's that. I don't think that's particularly great, but more than likely this will just be paired with Electrode if Electrode does see play. But let's check out the Electrode here. New Hisuian Pokemon, basic 210 HP, grass type, which is still weird for Electrode. I'm not quite used to that just yet. But it has a 0 energy attack. It is 100 for each special condition on this Pokemon, so on Electrode, not your opponent. And then its other attack for Grass Colorist is 120, and you discard all energy from this Pokemon. So pretty clear, the second attack, pretty much trash. The first one's going to be the main one we want to look at here. So if we pair this with Parasect, we can do, 200? Well, effectively 210 once you factor in the poison damage for 0 energy, which is pretty cool. We do have the new Dry Season Curry, I think it's called, coming out in the new Astral Radiance set. And that's another way you can inflict that third status condition. It allows you to burn yourself and heal 40, I think it is. Something like that, but that will get you up to that 310 mark, which is actually a really nice number because that knocks out pretty much everything relevant in the format. Other Pokemon VMAX outside of Mew, you will need like a choice belt or something, but that actually does seem pretty appealing, I do have to say, for 0 energy, which is really cool. Because you do have to play a lot of these clunky ways at inflicting status conditions, but since you don't really have to play energy, it kind of frees up that deck space for those cards that you need to inflict the status conditions. So I initially forgot about Dry Season Curry, but once a user reminded me of that, that did pique my interest in Electrode. So I actually think this attack is pretty cool, dare I say. So I think this could be a card to maybe look out for. Hitting 310 for 0 energy seems pretty good, I have to say. So we have Beautifly and Dustox up next. I'm pretty sure these cards were trash. Oh yeah, Beautifly, you draw until you have 6 in your hand, so it's just like Burrell. One extra card, but that's really not worth it on a stage 2, to have to play rare candies and stuff like that. I will point out though, the Wurmple has an interesting attack, though I don't know how you'll power this up or why you would power this up for 3 energy on a Wurmple. You search your deck for any number of Wurmple, Silcoon, Cascoon, Beautifly, and Dustox, reveal them, put them into your hand. So a cool attack, but I definitely wish this would have been just 1 grass energy. I really don't want 3 energy on a Wurmple. That seems like pretty much a waste, I'm not gonna lie. Do forget what Dustox does though. So your opponent's active is now confused in poison. They take 8 instead of 1 for poison. Okay, so effectively you're doing 80 in confusion for 2. Not that great. Most decks are going to switch out that retreat, so pretty weak card. So next we have a new Fium, which has kind of like a cool Call for Family style attack. You search your deck for up to 3 basic water Pokemon, put them onto your bench, shuffle your deck. These attacks haven't been that great, but I think if we were to play any of these, I think the Hisuian Basculin that we're getting in Astral Radiance is just better. It's 0 energy and you get 2. I feel like the reduction in Pokemon is worth not having to find energy and a switching card to get this Fium into the active and use this attack. So pretty weak, I think. And speaking of Basculin, we do have a new Basculin and Basculegion. I'm not crazy about the new Basculin. I think the Call for Family style attack on the one in Astral Radiance is just going to be better. But Basculin, or Basculegion, this card I remember was pretty interesting. We did see this one get revealed ahead of time. So it has the Spirit Climb attack. There's 20 for each basic energy in your discard pile, then shuffle those cards into your deck. So we have seen attacks like this in the past. Victini Prism Star is like the big one that really comes to mind. That was a card that did see actually a good bit of play in fire decks towards the end of its lifespan. But this is for any energy, which is, you know, pretty cool. That makes this card a little bit more flexible. The 0 energy cost, of course, is great too. But definitely just a little curious what deck we would play this in. Because like Victini saw play in fire decks that were playing like literally close to 20 energy. And there's not too many decks typically that want that many energy in a deck. Much less have the space to fit all of those. So I definitely think that is severely going to limit how much play Basculegion could see. And if you're trying to go up against like a V-Star Pokemon, we need what, 14 energy in discard to shuffle back in, because that'll be 280. So yeah, you need decks with very high energy counts, and there's just not too many currently. But like I said, there is going to be a new V-Star in this set that we haven't seen up until now. So I'm curious if this pairs nicely with any of these unrevealed cards that are also going to be released here in Dark Phantasma. So we have Pikachu. I do remember seeing this card earlier. If it has any energy on it, has no retreat cost, which is a pretty cool ability to have. I like that. And the artwork on this thing, absolutely A+. Love this Pika here. The attack, not too great though, unfortunately. We do have Raichu, another card we did get revealed pretty early on. It has this second attack, which is kind of cool. Lightning 2 colorless, Trump Spark. If you have used your V-Star power, it does 120 more. Yeah, so that's a thing. I don't know what decks would really want to play this. I think Arceus is probably going to be like one of your best options, really, because you can pop Starbirth and, you know, maybe set up this attack. So that's a thing, I guess. But, you know, most V-Star decks, I don't think really care to play, you know, this Raichu alongside of it. So I don't know. It's an okay card, but nothing special, I think. But we do have a new Magnazone V and V-Star, so who knows, maybe these will pair nicely together. They're both lightning Pokemon. I have no idea what these new Magnazones do. So let's check out the Magnazone V here. And Magnazone, I will say, does have a history of getting some really good cards in the past, so maybe these will end up being pretty solid. So Lightning Color, switch your opponent's bench with their active, does 40 to new active. Okay, that's pretty bad. Then Lightning 2 colors, 90, does 30 to 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So this is like pretty mediocre for an evolving Pokemon V. I'm sure the V-Star is going to be a good bit better though. Okay, and I gotta say, this artwork looking pretty fresh here on the Magnazone. I think it's our first Lightning V-Star, so I really like this, like the silver border, the gold from the V-Star combined with this crazy background. I think the art on this Magnazone looks really nice. Might even debatably be the best looking Magnazone we've ever had. I don't know. I think this one has to be up there though. So let's see what this thing does. Let's see, 180, then search your deck for 2 item cards. Ooh, put them into your hand. Okay, that's pretty saucy. I like that. The question is, what items do we want to get? Like, obviously we can get Ultra Balls and Quick Balls to set up like our next Pokemon, but I think things get a little bit more interesting when it comes to like other trainer cards like Hammers or things like Cross Switcher, or what's the... I'm blanking on it right now. Cross Receiver, I think is the one, or Crossceiver. That's the other one where you need 2 cards in your hand. So I think this attack is actually really cool. I think this could enable some really sweet plays. And this kind of reminds me of Arceus in a lot of ways, because you'll probably power it up with Twin Energy, so naturally you're hitting for, you know, kind of like that nice 2-shotting sort of number there. And then the bonus effect of the attack sort of helps set you up. So this attack is cool. I like this. And then the other attack for 2 lightning does 90 to 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Okay, this also a solid attack, because if we do 90, the 2 Pokemon, probably going to be Pokemon V-Star or V more than likely. Then coming in with this first attack, that's going to be 180. So that's going to add up to 270, assuming we're not attacking with a double turbo energy attached to this thing, of course. And that's going to be a nice amount of damage to knock out Pokemon V-Star. I mean, to knock out things like Arceus, you will need like a choice belt at some point along the way there. But the math for this actually does work out really nicely. Like, especially if you are playing this with Flaffy and you like whiff either the Flaffy on turn 2 or the attachment on either turn, you can just burn this V-Star power and just start spreading some damage and set up those KOs for future turns. But I gotta say, I do like Magnezone. I think his first attack is really cool and might enable some sweet plays. I'll have to look through the card pool. I'm sure there's got to be some other items that Definitely could pair nicely with this thing, outside of course, just standard stuff like quick balls and choice belts and stuff like that. But yeah, this seems really cool. I like this first attack a lot. Next up we have Clefairy, which is a very surprisingly decent card. I remember this one did get revealed ahead of time here, but it has the ability Moon Watching. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in the active, you may search your deck for a Psychic Energy and attach it to each of your bench Clefairy, then shuffle your deck. And its attack for 3 colors does 20 for each Psychic Energy attached to all of your Pokemon. I think this is potentially a really solid single prize attacker, because if we have all 4 Clefairy in play, you're searching your deck for 3 energy per Clefairy, I want to point out. So if you just play a bunch of switching cards and escape ropes and stuff like that, you can use all these abilities across all of your Clefairies. And then we still have things like Galarian Articuno, if you want to get some more energy in play on top of this. And I think it actually won't be too hard to, you know, really crank up this damage to a level that's going to be able to one-shot stuff. I mean, the big thing is you need to get the Clefairies in play first before you start burning all these abilities. But once you do that, you're going to be good to go. 60 HP, also really good. That means these are going to be level ball searchable. We also just got Hisuian Heavy Ball coming out in Astral Radiance, so we can get these Clefairies out of the prize cards pretty easily as well if we need to. Yeah, I think these cards are cool. I don't really foresee you playing these with Shadow Rider. Some people I know might consider that, but Shadow Rider doesn't have the bench space for all of these Clefairies that you want in play. This also could potentially be a partner for Mewtwo VSTAR that's coming out in the Pokemon Go set. Just because Mewtwo discards Psychic Energy from play, you can use the Clefairies to get the Psychic Energy to play. So yeah, I think this Clefairy is pretty cool. So next up we have Gengar, and this was a card that was one of the first that got revealed from this set. And I won't lie, when I first saw this, I was like, it's okay, no big deal. But the more I've thought about it, the more I've actually come around to really liking this card. And really just for this ability, the attack really isn't too special here. But the ability, once during your turn, you may put this card from your discard onto your bench. And if you do, put 3 damage counters on this Pokemon. So yeah, I really like this ability. Just on principle, I wish we saw more stuff like this that helped us cheat those stage 2s into play and, you know, help make those decks more consistent. But like I said, we're not really attacking with Gengar, so that aspect doesn't matter too much here. But there's definitely a few decks out there that really could like this ability. The big one, of course, is going to be the new Hisuian Zoroark V-Star that wants damaged Pokemon on the field to do more damage. We also have Primate back from Battle Styles that does something very similar. And we even have Serenity, which is a card that I think definitely gets a bump after Astral Radiance and Lost Origin and might finally be a somewhat viable deck. But yeah, that's kind of like the Mega Gardevoir deck we have in the expanded format, where you discard bench Pokemon to do more damage, and with Gengar, you can just get these Gengars back in play every time you discard them with your Serena. So these are going to be the 3 big decks that come to mind for me right out the gate. But obviously, like I said, the big one I think has to be Hisuian Zoroark V-Star. That's, I think, going to be the big card from this set people are going to have to keep their eye out for. And this seems like a natural sort of like maybe 1 of 2 of in that deck. Next up we have Mr. Mime, which is not a great card, but I do want to point out, I think this card is a lot of fun. The second attack here does 90, and you play Rock, Paper, Scissors with your opponent. If you win, prevent all effective attacks, including damage done to this Pokemon during your opponent's next turn. So probably not the most competitive card, but I imagine pre-releases have to be a blast with this thing. If I pull this in a pre-release and I have, good psychic Pokemon to go with it, I'm going to try to power this thing up. I think this card could be hilarious. So not a great card, but definitely a fun one. So next up we have Mismagius, which is an interesting card, I think. If this Pokemon is at max HP and is knocked out by damage from an opponent's attack, place 8 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. And then its only attack for a Psychic Energy, place 2 damage counters on each of your opponent's Pokemon. So it definitely looks like they're trying to push some sort of spread archetype here with Mismagius, which I do think is pretty cool. We haven't had really like a viable spread deck in a while. And this being damage counters in particular is really good because that is going to bypass Manaphy, which normally would make it very difficult for these spread decks to be able to function. I do worry about the actual damage output. 2 damage counters isn't that much in a format with like 300 HP Pokemon, if I'm being honest. But the ability does make up for that a little bit, I guess. We do still have, well, we might potentially have Horror Psychic Energy by the time this comes out. We don't yet know if our summer rotation is going to be before or after Worlds. So if it's after Worlds, then we still could have a couple of events. We'll basically have like a weekend or 2 of events where this will be legal alongside Horror Psychic Energy. So that could be good. But I like the card. I like spread strategies. I've historically played a few over the years too. So I'll be very curious to see, you know, what the format is going to look like, what the card pool is going to look like by the time this thing comes out. But it has some potential if we can find some ways at compounding this spread damage output. But could be a card to potentially look out for. So next up we have Radiant Gardevoir. Very happy to see the Radiant Pokemon are returning here for future sets. So of course we can only have one Radiant Pokemon in deck, but with Gardevoir, this one has an ability that says your Pokemon take 20 less damage from your opponent's Pokemon V's attacks. The attack here pretty bad, we're probably not going to use it, but the ability definitely could be good. We are getting the new Hisuian Goodra V-Star, which could be a new tanking Pokemon, and this definitely could be good in decks like Hisuian Goodra, or even current things like the Stonjourner VMAX, Duraludon VMAX, really any of these big tanking V-Star and VMAX decks that are trying to abuse healing methods and force your opponent into like 3 and 4 shotting you. Gardevoir definitely could be another addition to the toolbox there, and definitely could be better than something like Greninja or Howlucha in those styles of decks. So next up we have the first Hisuian Zoroark we're going to take a look at. This is not the main one to be excited about, but this one is kind of cool as well. It has the Hex of Ruin, attack for 0 energy. At the end of your opponent's next turn, the Fang Pokemon is knocked out. That's other attack for Psychic Energy. You choose one card from discard pile, reveal it, and put it into your hand. So normally these like Hex of Ruin style attacks that we've seen in the past over the years have all been pretty bad most of the time. Now this being 0 energy is instantly a little bit more attractive. I definitely do like that. And this actually could synergize with this second attack, because really I think the second attack means that Zoroark more than likely would be at the center of some sort of control or milling deck. And I could see a world where after you finally establish your locking strategy, you could actually pivot into using something like Hex of Ruin to actually take KOs and sweep your opponent to win the game that way. Because like, let's say you finally trap your opponent with a Galar Mine or whatever it might be to trap them in the active. And once they can't move, you start going in with Hex of Ruin to start taking KOs, and you just do this over and over until you win. So I could see something like that maybe happening. I don't know, but the second attack is, I definitely think, the stronger of the two. Getting any card from discard is really good. I know it's just one card, but it's still super good. A lot of time these attacks, like on Floatzel that we just got in Brilliant Stars, are going to be limited to just like a certain type of card. But the fact that it's any card and goes directly to hand, I think is really strong. So we'll have to see what control players are going to come up with, but Zoroark definitely has some potential there. Next up, we have the first Amorous card. We have Amorous V. Let's see. 210 HP, Metal Weakness. I had no idea what this thing's typing even was, so I guess this is going to be Fairy in the video games, I suppose. It has this ability, as long as this Pokemon is in the active, prevent all effects of your opponent's abilities done to your Pokemon with any Psychic Energy attached, except any Amorous V. Okay, and then the attack for Psychic 2 colors is 100. Attach up to 2 basic energies from discard to your Pokemon any way that you like. This seems kind of bad. Maybe I'm missing something, guys. Like, just off the top of my head, this seems pretty weak. To really use this ability, that means we have to be attacking with an Amorous. But this attack is not the type of deck you really want to, like, base your deck strategy around. Like, this is the type of card you might run as a one-of in your deck to use this attack literally one time, making this ability not very irrelevant, or not very relevant. This definitely should have been an ability you could activate from the bench. I don't know why it's limited to just active spot. That's really weird to me. And the attack, also not that great. Like, if we're committing 3 energy to an Amorous, why wouldn't we just commit the energy to a different Pokemon? Like, this thing is going to get return KO'd, and 100's not nearly enough damage to make this attack worth it. So this seems just all around pretty awful to me. Guys, again, feel free to comment down below. Let me know if you disagree, if I'm missing something, but this just seems pretty bad. I can't think of any other way to describe it. So next up we have Hisuian Arcanine, which is a card that's actually grown on me a little bit since this was first revealed a couple weeks ago. But it has this 0 energy attack, this 10, plus 150 if you have no cards in your hand. So guys, I know this seems, I guess at face value, really bad. Like, what do you mean you have 0 cards in your hand? That seems awful. But we have seen strategies like this in the past actually be successful. The big one, obviously, is going to be the Granville back from Lost Thunder. That was actually a pretty competitive single prize deck for its time. Had essentially the same attack, very similar. You know, there is a precedent set where Arcanine definitely could mimic potentially that same success. And there definitely are quite a few ways at playing down our hand right now. So of course we have Ultra Ball. That's going to be one of the big ones that allows us to play down our hand. We still have Quick Ball, but that could potentially change depending on what gets rotated, or I'm sorry, when the rotation happens. We also are getting Grant and Astral Radiance. That definitely seems like a sick card for Arcanine. We can do more damage and discard cards in the process. We have Galarian Meowth, Galarian Articuno V. So there's like no shortage of ways to get our hand down to 0. I don't think it's going to be an issue. Every turn we're going to do that. Then on the next turn, we refill the hand with Barrel and just keep looping the strategy over and over. Fighting is also a pretty good type to have after this set. We just saw that Magnazone. That looks kind of promising. That definitely could be good. That's weak to fighting. We have Hisuian Zoroark V-Star is going to be weak to fighting. Arceus V-Star is weak to fighting. So the typing of this really could be the thing that propels this to being competitive, because otherwise I would be a little bit more skeptical of this. I think one of the big things Gramble had in its favor is that it had some ways at cheating its damage up to a point where it could eventually take one-shots. Well, effectively one-shots. It had like ways at spreading damage with Shrine of Punishment, and this doesn't really have that same method of pushing its damage up to take one-shots. You're basically always two-shotting with Arcanine, but like I said, given the format that it might emerge into, it might have a lot of stuff that it hits for weakness, and that could be the big differentiating factor that might push this card from being okay to maybe being a viable single prize deck. But I like Arcanine. This seems pretty cool. Not having to play any energy is great. Maybe you play like one double turbo just to retreat if you have to, or something like that. But yeah, overall, I think Arcanine seems really cool. Very excited to try this out and see, you know, if it can live up to, you know, its predecessor, Gramble. All right, next up we have Machamp, and I feel like this card is going to be bad. I don't know what this does just yet, but Machamp, despite being like a pretty fan favorite Pokemon, has consistently gotten really awful cards over the past several years. Like the last good Machamp was probably, what's the set? Was it Stormfront? I forget right now, but it's been like literally over a decade, I think, since we've had, oh no, Machamp Prime was also decent. I'll give it that. But yeah, it's been a long time since we've had a good Machamp. So let's check out this thing, see how it stacks up. So if your opponent has three or fewer prize cards remaining, this Pokemon gets 150 HP extra. That's pretty cool. 300 HP on the stage 2. Single prize Pokemon. Okay. Speaking my language a little bit here. And then for fighting, you may choose to do 100 more damage. If you do, during your next turn, this Pokemon can't attack. Okay. I definitely have mixed thoughts about this card. So the attack cost is not the worst thing in the world, because between Gutsy Pickaxe and Raihan, we actually can get the energy in play, and I think chain these Machamps. I don't think it's going to be too big of an issue. It's going to be, you know, a little annoying, but overall I don't think it's going to be like a huge deal here. But I definitely could see this attack actually being better in the early game. Like, I actually think this ability and attack both work against each other, because a lot of times you don't mind doing the 100 extra damage and foregoing being able to attack, because having 150 HP means you're going to get one shot anyways, so you don't mind sacrificing the ability to attack. But once you get down in the late game, once you get that great 150 HP buff, well, now suddenly you're going to have to find switching cards every turn if you want to keep attacking with the same Machamp. So that actually seems really annoying. I really don't like how this ability and this attack work together. They actually literally work against each other. Probably not going to be a great Machamp, but it's better than some of the other recent ones we've had. I'll at least give it that. So up next we do have Gliscor. Let's see, Hurricane Shock for 2 fighting, flip 4 coins, 50 for each heads. If you flip 2 or more heads, your opponent's active is now paralyzed. Okay, that's kind of cool. The issue is just the damage output though, guys. Like on average, you're hitting for around 100. I mean, and you can play down Choice Belt, of course, but 100 in paralysis for 2 energy, not that great, I have to say. Like your opponent, you're giving your opponent plenty of time to find switching cards, and yeah, this seems overall really weak. I can't say I'm a big fan of this. So next up we have Glade V here, and you know, Pokemon typically loves Gardevoir and Glade. They usually give them pretty decent cards, so hopefully this thing is pretty solid. For Fighting Colorist is 20, plus 50 for each prize card you've already taken. Okay, so this is definitely kind of a win more card. You could think of it that way. So if you've taken 5 prizes, you're doing 270. So that is going to knock out a lot of Pokemon VSTAR running around. So that's kind of cool. What deck are we playing this in? Not really sure. Maybe Lucario, Cleavor V. I'm just not sure what fighting decks would be able to make use of this. Like, we have Rapid Strike Urshifu, of course, but Rapid Strike Urshifu is kind of like a different energy engine. It has Rapid Strike energies and stuff like that. Currently, I don't see many decks that this would slot nicely into. I think something like Lucario V-Star or Cleavor V-Star would have to take off in order for this to see play, and this would then slot nicely kind of into those decks, but otherwise, this definitely could be a little bit challenged to get up and running. So, cool attack. You know, it could be good. We'll have to see, though. So, next up we have Crobat, which I gotta say, it looks pretty sweet here. I love the artwork on this thing. But let's check it out. Dark Energy is 50 in poison. Nothing special there. 30 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. If any of your opponent's Pokemon was knocked out, take 2 more prize cards. Okay. I mean, that's kind of cool, guys, but this is a stage 2 that needs 3 energy to do 30 damage. That seems really bad. I feel like if you're committing all of this space for a stage 2 line in your deck, more than likely you could use that same deck space to just force whatever deck you're playing to take one-shots as it is. So, like, just use that space for other stuff, like an Inteleon line to do more damage with quick shooting, or stuff like Leon, or more choice belts. Like, this seems very, very clunky. I'm just trying to think, like, what deck even wants this, honestly. Like, it has a 3 energy attack cost for colors, which is good. That's flexible, you know, that gives you a lot of different chances to use this, but I still can't think of any deck that wants this. We also don't have triple acceleration energy in the format, so that means you also need some sort of deck that can accelerate energy to Crobat as well. So this attack is cool, but I don't like it, though. I don't think this is probably going to see a whole lot of play. Okay, next we have another Radiant Pokemon. This was another pretty early reveal for this set, though. But we have Radiant Hisuian Sneasler. Its ability says, put 2 more damage counters on your opponent's poison Pokemon during Pokemon Checkup. And its attack for a Dark and 2 colorist is 90, and your opponent's active is poison. So the attack, not too special, guys. We don't really want to attack with Sneasler if we don't have to. But the ability just to change our math for those poison-based decks. So I think the big ones that come to mind are going to be the new Hisuian Electrode, which we looked at, that is going to push its damage output up to, what, 330 actually? Without Choice Belt, if we have all 3 status conditions. So that seems kind of cool. Hisuian Sneasler V, that's another deck that would like some extra damage. Or also the Salazzle deck. So this seems like a natural one of in those styles of decks. Hisuian Greninja, I'm sorry, not Hisuian Greninja. Radiant Greninja doesn't seem good there. Gardevoir doesn't seem good there. Hawlucha debatably might be better in those decks, though. So, I don't know. This would be a toss-up between Hawlucha and Sneasler for those styles of decks. We'll have to see. But, you know, Sneasler, it's not that bad. So next up we have a Spiritomb. It says, if this Pokemon is knocked out by damage from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, search your deck for a card and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. Okay, that's kind of cool. Then 2 Dark, this 10, plus 60 for each Spiritomb in your discard. Okay, that's actually kind of cool. Dare I say I do like this card, because like every time you attack with Spiritomb, you can search your deck for what you need to set up your next one. So like a Dark Patch or maybe a Rescue Carrier. So if we do have all Spiritomb in discard as well, that's going to be, what, 250? Oh, wait. No, we won't be able to do that because we need at least 1 Spiritomb in play to attack. So that's going to be, what, 190? That's still, like, on a 1 prize, or not bad, but, like, I wish we had something in format that could copy the attacks of our basic Pokemon. I don't know if there is something that I'm just forgetting, but that would definitely make this attack much better, because then you're only a Choice Belt away from a one-shot on a V-Star. Otherwise, you're doing 2 for 190, which again isn't horrible, but it just seems like not quite good enough. And you can't build your whole deck around Spiritomb. You do need other attackers, so you might need something like a Hoopa. But again, depending on when the rotation happens, Hoopa might have rotated by the time this comes out. Yeah, I think the partner for Spiritomb definitely is up in the air as well. You're probably playing Dark Patch, so I imagine you're just playing other Dark Pokemon as well. But yeah, I think right now this card's like not quite as good as I would like it to be. And next up we have our last Radiant Pokemon. This is going to be the one that was unrevealed up until now. So we got Radiant Steelix. I gotta say, our homie Steelix is looking very fresh in this artwork. Really do like this. But basic Pokemon, 170 HP. That's pretty cool. First attack, 20. Attach up 2 metal from your discard to this Pokemon. Ugh, that doesn't seem that great, because Steelix probably just gets one shot anyways. Like, unless you have a Cape, but Cape might rotate by the time this comes out, so... yeah, this attack seems pretty bad here. But second attack, 2 metal colorless, 60, discard cards from the top of your deck. Until you have 1 card left in deck, okay. This attack does 30 more for each card, each energy card discarded in this way. Okay. So that could be good. Like, could be. Man, that's a tricky one, guys, because we probably need Metal Saucer to get this guy up and running, but Metal Saucer might potentially rotate. So that's definitely going to be a big what if when it comes to this card, because we really don't want to play other cards like Magnazone from Astral Radiance to power this thing up, ideally. Well, but I will say, if we are playing Magnezone, we're probably also playing a ton of energy if we're trying to attack with Steelix, so Magnezone's ability is probably going to work pretty consistently. Oh, and I guess we can pair this with Hisuian Basculegion. After we use this attack, we use Basculegion, shuffle all that energy back in deck, and at that point, you're doing tons of damage, so that seems cool. I gotta say, this seems really clunky, though. Like, I really want to like this card. There's a few cards that pair very nicely with it, but it just seems like a very inconsistent strategy, because you have to run, let's be real, you're probably running close to 20 energy. Yeah, this might be a gimmick. It definitely does not rival Radiant Greninja or Radiant Gardevoir or even Radiant Holucha. I think it's going to be one of the lower tier Radiant Pokemon, but still a pretty interesting one. None of the ones we've seen so far have like really interesting attacks other than Heatran, and Heatran's like kind of mid as well. So it's nice to see at least a Radiant Pokemon with some cool attacks instead of abilities. So we have a new Bronzong, which I actually do like the artwork on this thing, very cool. But it has Gravitational Drop, 40 plus 40 for each colorless in your opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost. I mean, not that good, unfortunately, guys. There's a million of these styles of cards out right now. Like, we have the Probopass that does, for just 1 metal, I'm pretty sure. I think it's 10 plus 30 or 30 plus 30. So it's slightly weaker than this, but the attack cost is infinitely more flexible. But of course, you still have Leafeon VMAX. That's the big one. And that's going to be the strongest way to do these styles of attacks. So I don't really think we're ever going to play Bronzong. Galarmine might even rotate by the time this comes out too. So definitely not, yeah, definitely not a contender in this set. Okay, next up we have Hisuian Goodra. It's going to be a single prize one. So 160 HP. Ignore all damage done by your opponent's Pokemon V's attacks to your basic Pokemon that have any metal energy attached. Oh. Okay. That's actually kind of cool. I kind of like this, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, your opponent can boss Goodra. That's like the big thing you have to keep in mind. They can just boss Goodra to take care of this thing. But, so like what Pokemon are gonna have metal energy attached? Zacian V, Zamazenta V, but those might rotate by the time this comes out, so maybe this won't be that good. In terms of other metal attackers, we have Origin Dialga VSTAR, but Dialga is not basic. We need basic attackers with metal energy. There's the Zamazenta V from Brilliant Stars. That's something. I think I would just have to take a peek in the card pool to see what we have right now, especially after a rotation might occur. But this ability definitely seems like it has potential, I've got to say, because it doesn't specify regular Pokemon V. This makes me think this would be Pokemon V, V-Star, and V-Max. So I want to like Goodra. This is a card I want to keep my eye on, and I'll have to, like I said, look through the card pool and see if there's anything else that we missed today. But definitely could be an annoying card to watch out for. But we have Hisuian Goodra V-Star. This is a card we did see pretty early on, but this card actually seems really cool. I do like this. 270 HP, 0 weakness, 3 retreat. First attack here is really what makes, I think, this card so good. So for water, Metal Colorist is 200, and during your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes 80 less damage from attacks, which is wild. So after using this, if we have full HP, your opponent has to do effectively 350 damage if they want to one-shot you, which is going to be really difficult for a lot of decks to do. Like, yeah, I know Mew VMAX technically can, but they need, what, 4 power tablets and a choice belt if they copy Technoblast? So that's... I don't think most decks are going to one-shot you if you use this attack. And then we still have Big Charm. We have full face guard. We have, there's a new stadium card that will reduce damage. So I think Goodra is not getting one shot. And as long as that's the case, I think this card could be really good. Now, I will say the big issue this card faces, though, is your opponent can play Escape Rope and then boss you back up. That's going to be sort of the Achilles heel to this. So a deck like Mew VMAX, for example, could Escape Rope, force you onto the bench, and then just boss you back up, and suddenly your 80 reduction is going to be gone. Since whenever you leave the active, effects of attacks do get cleared. So that could be an issue. Even though this is a bad attack cost, we still have Melanie to help this get powered up. And I think more than likely you play this kind of like the old Primal Groudon. Like you just sack Diancie for the first couple turns, your opponent can't boss you, and you just manually power up the Goodra V on the bench until you're ready to start attacking. And then the V-Star power, you heal all damage from this Pokemon, so your opponent's like forced to 3-shot at least one of your Goodra V-Stars at some point. So Goodra, it's clunky, it's a bit slow, but once this thing gets up and running, I think it's going to be tough for your opponent to deal with this. So yeah, pretty cool card. I like this. So next up we have kind of the inverse of Goodra V-Star. Goodra is like all about tanking and being defensive and doing a pretty good job of that, but Hisuian Zoroark V-Star is going to be the opposite. It's hyper aggressive, and I think this card is definitely going to be the big card to watch out for from this set. I think this card is absolutely sick. But first, before the V-Star, I actually will point out the first attack on Zoroark V, not bad either. For 0 energy, does 30, and you switch this with one of your bench Pokemon. So of course, guys, you do need a turn to get set up before you can start evolving, and this could be a nice way of just getting your Zoroark on the bench. Make sure your opponent can't take an easy 2 prizes on their next turn if they went first. But the V-Star definitely is where things get more exciting. This attack here, for just 2 colorless energy, so just a single double turbo, does 50 for each of your Pokemon that has any damage counters on it. So with Gapejaw Bog that we're getting in Astral Radiance, if we have all of our Pokemon in play with damage counters, that's going to be 300 damage. With a choice belt, that's 330. And even with the reduction from double turbo energy, if we're using that, that's 310. That knocks out Mew V-Star, which is the, Mew V-Max. That's going to be the big one that you really care about anyways. And this makes quick work of really any Pokemon V-Star. This thing is super aggressive. And then the ability here, you discard your hand and draw 7 cards. So it's a free research, which is wild. So in a single turn, you can research and use this ability, drawing 14, and that's still not counting other cards like Crobat V or Barrel to allow you to dig even further. So this thing, it hits like a truck, and it's super consistent in the process. I think this might even dethrone Arceus, I'm not gonna lie, as the best colorless V-Star that we have. I know Arceus is like more flexible of the 2 cards, but Zoroark just hits so freaking hard. I don't know what it is, but Pokemon loves to print really strong Zoroark cards. Zoroark GX, of course, was insanely dominant, and this thing definitely could wind up being so as well. Fighting weakness isn't even a big deal because we have Dunsparce, and that is still going to be in format even after the rotation potentially as well. We have the new Gengar we looked at to get damage counters on itself to fuel this attack. Like I said, we have Gapejaw Bog, and there's even an item in this set that will allow you to move damage counters around to make sure you can get this attack up and running. So yeah, Zoroark is absolutely insane. I think this card is a slam dunk. Definitely going to be the big card to keep an eye out for in this set. So getting into our trainers, we have Arcphone up first. We look at the top card of our deck, then return it to the top. Then you may choose one of your face down prize cards and switch it with the top card of your deck. So this is pretty cool. I think prize manipulation effects just in general are good to have in the game because a lot of times it does help alternate win condition decks like control decks out there that don't actually take prizes. But then there's also just like really creative plays that you can make with these things. Like in Expanded, for example, we have a card called Greedy Dice where whenever you take it out of your prizes, you can, I think it's you flip a coin of heads, take an additional prize. You can do cool stuff where like use Arcphone to put a Greedy Dice into your prizes, then take it, and then potentially take another one. So there's just cool things you can do with this. In Standard, I'm blanking off the top of my head, I'm not gonna lie. There's Dream Ball, right? Isn't that a card that we want to take off of our prizes whenever we... Or is Dream Ball search our prize? I forget what Dream Ball does, but something to do with prize cards. Arcphone might be able to help with that out. Yeah, I'm really not sure if there's something broken I'm just blanking on off the top of my head, but Expanded, there's definitely a lot more effects like this that would pair nicely with Arcphone. But it's a cool card, happy to have it in format. I don't think it's going to be like a staple of the format or anything though. Next up, we have Damage Pump. This is the card I was talking about when I mentioned Hisuian Zoroark VSTAR. We get to move up to 2 damage counters from one of your Pokemon to your other Pokemon in any way that you like. So of course, sometimes with the Zoroark, we are going to have to bench stuff before we find our stadium. And this is a card that can allow us to still move those damage counters around a little bit better and make sure that we can get some damage counters on some of those previous Pokemon. We also, of course, have Gengar that we can cheat into play, and it places damage counters on itself whenever we do that. So this could be a way to take those damage counters off Gengar and again move them to some of those previously undamaged Pokemon. As far as non-Zoroark decks, I don't think there's too many that really want to use this. Zoroark definitely is going to be the most attractive option for this thing, I have to say. But there are still other weird things in the format, like was it Volcarona V, I think, has to have a specific number of damage counters on it to get like a big damage buff. So there's weird stuff like that. But again, Zoroark is going to be the big one and people are really going to have to look at with this card. Next up, we have Mechanical Arm. This is going to be the card we are going to play with our Hisuian Electrode V to make sure we can attack even while it is asleep, because it's a tool that says while it's attached, Pokemon can attack even while asleep and paralyzed. So not too many other decks are really going to make use of this. Really just decks like Electrode that are going to make use of Parasect to put status conditions on themselves here. So it's going to be a key card for those decks, I would say. And really not much else, if I'm being honest. We have Calamity Case that says if the Pokemon V this card is attached to has full HP and is knocked out by damage from an opponent's attack, put 8 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. So if only this wasn't Pokemon V, this actually would have been a cool card to pair with Mismagius, because Mismagius already has an ability kind of like this. So that would have been really cool. But, you know, this is a neat card, but it definitely is disrupted by a number of different cards as well. Like if your opponent's playing any sort of damage placing effects like Inteleon or Galarian Zigzagoon, that is going to break this and you won't be able to get those 8 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon. This is also a very passive tool compared to something like Choice Belt, which does give your opponent a chance to get down something like a Tool Jammer or a Tool Scrapper or even a Boss's Orders to play around this. Whereas Choice Belt, you get benefit from it the exact turn that you play it. So that is sort of the downside, even though this is significantly stronger than Choice Belt. So this seems kind of like a gimmick. There might be something that we would play this with. I think if we did play it, it would have to be with probably basic Pokemon V, just because those are going to be the Pokemon V that are most susceptible to being one-shot out there. But I will say Honchkrow V definitely seems like a really fun target, because in theory, you can slap down literally all 4 of these on a Honchkrow. And if your opponent does one-shot you, they take, what, 320 damage, which is absolutely insane. And then you could play, like, the Granbull, I think it is from... Is it Evolving Skies or Fusion Strike? I forget. The Granbull that allows you to get tool cards back into your hand. And you could just do that over and over. That could be a fun meme deck. But, yeah, this card definitely seems a little bit gimmicky. Choice Belt is probably going to be better for most decks still. So we have Volo. It's going to be a new supporter card. It says discard one of your bench Pokemon V and all attached cards. So this is going to be basically just to deny your opponent taking knockouts on stuff. But I think a lot of the times Collapse Stadium is just going to be a little bit better. I mean, just because it's a stadium card, you don't have to waste your supporter for turn on the same effect. And you can disrupt your opponent at the same time. So I've got to say, I'm not a big fan of this overall. This definitely could be better in decks that are operating with like only 2 or 3 Pokemon in play at a time. But most decks aren't. And I don't think this is going to outclass Collapse Stadium, but maybe in a deck where you have to play a different stadium. Like let's say your core strategy has to be something with like Gapejaw Bog. That's an easy example, like the Zoroark deck. Decks like that where the stadium is absolutely integral to what you're doing every single turn. This could be better than Collapsed in those instances, but most decks, guys, I don't think are going to be playing this, just in my opinion. So next up we have Iscan. Not sure how you want to pronounce that, but draw 2. If your active Pokemon has Hisuian in its name, draw 2 more cards. So I think this is going to be another pretty weak supporter, unfortunately. Draw 4 isn't the worst, and we have seen some draw 4 effects actually see some play. One of the big ones in the past is Coach Trainer. That was draw 4 if your active was a tag team. And so that's all play in decks where they literally just played exclusively tag teams and nothing else, like Gardevoir Sylveon GX. That was a big one where you played literally 4 Gardevoir Sylveon and sometimes literally no other Pokemon. So I'm not a big fan of this, I have to say. But who knows, there might be some sort of like lone Hisuian Goodra deck or something like that where you literally just play 4 Hisuian, Goodra, and V-Star, and no other cards. So this could be good if a deck like that eventually emerges, but right now I'm not too impressed with this thing. Next up we have Arizu, not sure how this thing is pronounced, but this was another early reveal. You search your deck for up to 3 evolution Pokemon that don't have a rule box, put them into your hand, then shuffle your deck. So I really like the spirit of this card. This is definitely up my alley. I love seeing support for decks that aren't big hulking multi-prize decks, but I do still worry that this could be a little bit slow. So I think if you were to play this, you would need to play this in a deck that was playing Burrell or has some other non-supporter based way at drawing cards, because otherwise this is going to be really slow. Typically in a deck, you're going to need more than just evolution Pokemon every turn. So you're going to need to play something like Burrell or Cincino or like the new Hisuian Samurott, some other way at drawing cards to make sure this card isn't too slow. So I don't think this card will probably see too much play, unfortunately. I think if it did, maybe something like Mad Party could use this, but even still, I'm a little bit skeptical even of something like that. So this might be a pass for me. So we have Misfortune Sisters up next. It's going to be our last supporter card we're going to look at. It says, look at the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck. You may discard any number of item cards you find there, and your opponent shuffles the other cards back into their deck. So this is cool for control players because right now we don't really have any great ways at expediting the milling process for decks. Like a lot of the control decks are either playing, like they're playing something like Durant, you know, just to do straight milling effects. But a lot of the other styles of control decks really don't have any way at expediting the milling process, and sometimes they might run out of time to complete matches due to that. So this is going to allow those decks to, you know, maybe speed up games and, you know, end them a little bit quicker. And discarding items definitely is good because especially if you're trying to trap stuff in the active, this could maybe discard things like Air Balloon or switches and stuff like that. So this definitely could be good for those decks. I don't think it's going to be too impactful in non-milling or control decks. And so not much else to really say. Like I said, probably just going to be a card for these control decks out there. And for the last card today, we have Lake Acuity. So it's a new statement. It says, Pokemon with water or fighting energy attached take 20 less damage from opponent's Pokemon's attacks. So I think it's pretty clear they're trying to push this alongside Hisuian Goodra V-Star, I would imagine at least. So in theory, you can take 100 less from attacks every single turn if this thing remains in play. But I do think probably Crystal Cave is going to be a little bit stronger for Goodra. Like the big advantage to Lake Acuity is that you would play this in Goodra if you were worried about being one-shot, but you're not. So the 30 heal is going to be better than the 20 reduction. This definitely still could be an option in maybe some other sort of tanking archetype out there. Think of stuff like the Stonjourner VMAX deck where you're just trying to heal every turn and reduce damage. This obviously would make total sense in a deck like that. But overall, Goodra is probably the most attractive partner for this right now. But like I said, Crystal Cave probably just outclasses it. So definitely still could be a stadium that does see play eventually. But right now, I think it's a little bit outclassed. And it looks like that is going to be it for all of the new cards coming out in Dark Phantasma. I think there definitely were some cool cards to get excited about today. The big one obviously has to be Zoroark. That card is absolutely unreal. I think it's probably instantly going to be one of the best decks in format if I'm just being honest. But even outside that, we did see some other cool cards. I think Magnazone and also Goodra V-Star both seem pretty promising as well. Radiant Gardevoir, probably my favorite Radiant Pokemon we saw today too. But definitely curious what you guys are thinking as well. Sound off down below in the comment section what cards from the new Dark Phantasma set have you guys excited. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, these are just going to be my initial thoughts on these cards. I will have a full set review closer to the release of the full Lost Origins set this summer. But if you guys did enjoy today's content, remember to smack that like button. And if you want to take that support to the next level, you can also become a patron at patreon.com/rarecandytcg or pick up some merch at rarecandytcg.com. Links to those will be down below in the description. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.